Let me start by saying this. I've been in the FBI for over 15 years. I've investigated fraud rings, RICO cases, and more identity theft scams than I can count. But nothing could have prepared me for the day a group of fake community police officers showed up at my front door, trying to arrest me over a supposed Homeowners Association violation. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just any homeowner. I was a federal agent, and I had been documenting their every move for weeks. It began small. A letter slipped under my door. No stamp, no postmark, just an envelope labeled Notice of Violation. Inside, a badly formatted letter claiming I owed $1,200 for an unapproved mailbox color. Now, I've lived in this neighborhood for 6 years. I know our bylaws. I also know that no such rule existed. Still, I kept the letter. Rule number 1. Always document. Fake fines are like fake debt collectors. The first step to dismantling them is evidence. A week later came the knock. 3 men in black tactical uniforms, with patches that read, Community Compliance Police. They wore duty belts, radios, even fake badges that could fool most people at a glance. But to a trained investigator like me, the scene showed immediately. No serial numbers on the badges, no issued sidearms, radios that weren't on the right frequency. Still, they looked official enough to terrify any ordinary family. They told me I was under arrest for non-payment of HOA fines. That alone was laughable. A homeowners association has zero power to arrest anyone. Civil matters belong in civil court. But these men weren't here for legal process. They were here to intimidate. I played along. I asked questions. Who sent you? What law am I accused of breaking? They couldn't answer. That was my first confirmation. They weren't legitimate. But here's where my FBI instincts kicked in. Instead of confronting them outright, I invited them to leave paperwork. They left me a summons, complete with misspelled legal terms and a payment demand wired to a personal PayPal account. That was their second mistake. Real fines go through escrow or association accounts, never personal wallets. I scanned the document, logged it into evidence, and sent copies to both my supervisor and a federal task force that tracks financial fraud. Behind the scenes, I also reviewed my finances. Why? Because scams like this often target vulnerabilities. I checked my credit, still locked with all 3 bureaus. I checked my insurance, liability and fraud coverage intact. My emergency fund? Fully funded. I wasn't just prepared emotionally. I was prepared financially. And that's something most victims don't realize. Your finances are your first shield against intimidation. 2 days later, they escalated. A different letter this time. This one claiming I owed $5,400 in security assessment fees. Again, total nonsense. But the letter had something new, a threat of lien. They said they'd put a line on my property and force foreclosure unless I paid immediately. That's when I knew this wasn't just intimidation. This was organized fraud. Fake lines can destroy credit, block refinancing, and trap families in debt. I've seen retirees lose homes over scams like this. I set up cameras, a total inside and out. I created duplicate cloud storage accounts in case they tried to tamper with evidence. I even notified my bank to flag suspicious transfers. I was turning my house into both a fortress and a crime scene, prepared for the next move. And the next move came faster than expected. Saturday morning, 8:14 a.m. The sound of heavy boots on my porch. I opened the door with my badge already in hand, my body camera recording, and my phone streaming live to an encrypted drive. The same 3 men stood there, this time with handcuffs in hand. You're under arrest for HOA violations, the tall one barked. I almost laughed. Instead, I let them speak. The more rope they gave themselves, the easier it would be to hang their case in court. But here's the hook. When they tried to grab my arm, I flipped my badge open. Federal Bureau of Investigation. You just attempted to arrest a federal agent under false authority. Congratulations, gentlemen. You've escalated your scam into a federal offense. Their faces drained of color. What they thought was intimidation had just turned into evidence for wire fraud. impersonating law enforcement, and attempted extortion. And I had it all on tape. The moment I flashed my badge, the porch went silent. The three men who thought they could scare me into handing over cash now looked like schoolboys caught cheating on a final exam. But I wasn't about to let them walk away. Not yet. "Do me a favor," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. "Repeat what you just told me. Nice and clear for the camera." The tall one stuttered, then tried to backpedal. We were just enforcing community rules." I raised an eyebrow. "With handcuffs and threats of arrest? That's impersonation of law enforcement. That's a felony." I watched their Adam's apples bob as the weight of my words sank in. They bolted, sprinting down my driveway and into a black SUV with paper plates. I didn't chase. I didn't need to. My cameras had their faces, their plates, their fake badges. Evidence locked. Case secured. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Scammers rarely quit after one failed attempt. They regroup. They escalate. And when they do, they target the thing most people fear most: their finances. That night, I logged into my credit monitoring dashboard. Sure enough, 3 separate soft pulls had been attempted under my name. Someone had tried applying for credit cards using my social security number. Amateurs. My credit was frozen with all 3 bureaus: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. But here's the terrifying truth. 67% of Americans still don't freeze their credit, and that's why identity theft racks up billions every year. If I hadn't locked mine years ago, I could have maxed out $30,000 in revolving credit before I even saw the first statement. I reported the attempted fraud to the FTC and looped in the FBI cybercrimes unit. Then, I called my bank. I set alerts for every transaction over $10. I even moved $40,000 from checking into my brokerage sweep account, safe from pull attempts. In other words, I wasn't just protecting my house. I was protecting every dollar attached to my name. Because scams like this, they don't stop at intimidation. They go for your entire financial fortress. 2 days later, the scam took a new shape. A certified letter arrived, this time looking professional. Letterhead, watermarks, even a notary stamp. It claimed a line had been filed against my home for delinquent HOA fees. The amount? $8,920. The deadline? 10 days. The penalty? Foreclosure. I've seen enough fraudulent filings to know the difference between real and fake. But here's the danger. In some states, scammers really do file fake lines. And unless you challenge them in court, they sit on your title like poison. Families have lost homes over this. My blood boiled, but my training kept me steady. Rule 1. Never let rage make you sloppy. I drove straight to the county clerk's office. Requested a certified title report. Clean dot. No liens. No filings. Which meant this document was pure fiction. But fiction with a purpose. To create fear. And fear makes people pay. But they picked the wrong target. I scanned the document, logged it, and uploaded it to the case file. I also flagged it with the clerk's office so no forged filings could sneak through without scrutiny. The scammers weren't done. That weekend they staged a full show of force. 2 vehicles pulled up outside my house. One, a white pickup with magnetic decals reading Community Police Division. 4 men got out, all in matching uniforms. One carried a clipboard, another carried bolt cutters. My cameras caught everything. They approached my fence like they owned it. That's when I stepped outside, phone recording, badge visible. "Gentlemen," I said, "before you trespass, let me save you the trouble. You're being recorded on 6 separate devices, and this property is protected under federal law." They froze, muttered curses, and retreated. But the message was clear. They wanted me scared, drained, desperate to pay. And for most families, it would have worked. Behind the scenes, I mapped their playbook. Step 1, fake fines. Step 2, fake arrests. Step 3, financial sabotage. Step 4, lien threats. Step 5, intimidation theater. I'd seen this structure before, not from HOAs, but from organized fraud rings. They weaponize fear, paperwork, and confusion. The average homeowner, juggling bills and kids, doesn't stand a chance. But me? I had surveillance, spreadsheets, and statute books. And I was just getting started. My wife, Lisa, started to worry. "What if they come back when you're not home?" she asked one night. I didn't lie to her. They will. That's why I've layered protections. Cameras, motion lights, and financial backups. If they drain one account, I've got reserves. If they try identity theft, my credit is locked. If they file false liens, I've got legal insurance to cover the fight. They can't bankrupt us, Lisa. Not when we're playing chess and they're playing checkers. Still, her fear was real. And that's exactly what these scammers wanted. Here's the twist most people don't expect. Intimidation scams often target neighborhoods with high equity homes. Why? Because a family with $300,000 in equity will do almost anything to protect it. They'll pay fake fines. They'll settle fraudulent liens. They'll bend to avoid risk. It's fear economics. But they didn't realize they targeted not just a homeowner, but a federal agent with a background in financial crimes. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to expose them, bankrupt them, and make sure no family ever fell for their scam again. The key to breaking any scam isn't brute force. It's patience. I didn't need to storm their hideout or chase their trucks. I needed to make them believe they were winning, just long enough to catch them in the act. That's where my financial background came in. Most scams collapse not under police pressure, but under paper trails. Bank accounts, payment processors, and shell LLCs leave fingerprints as obvious as any at a crime scene. My first move was bait. I called the number from the fraudulent lien letter. The man on the other end answered in a clipped, authoritative tone. "This is the enforcement division. Are you ready to settle your account?" I played dumb. $8,000, right? Do you take cashier's checks or wire?" He hesitated. "Wire transfer only. We'll provide account details after confirmation." Bingo. Dot. Real law enforcement never demands wire transfers. Only scammers do. Because once the money's gone. But what he didn't know was that I had a sting account ready to go. I set up a controlled wire. $1,000, seeded from a federal sting fund. To him, it would look like the start of compliance. To me, it was a beacon. Within hours, the account info hit my dashboard. An offshore bank routed through a U.S. intermediary. Classic laundering structure. I forwarded the details to FinCEN, the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit. The wheels were now turning at a level these clowns couldn't even spell, let alone escape. But finance wasn't my only weapon. I also had tech. I traced the spoofed phone number they used, routed through a VoIP service with a known fraud history. Subpoena in place, I had their registration data within 72 hours. Fake names, but real IP addresses. Cross-referenced those with login logs, and suddenly their anonymous' network wasn't so anonymous. I could see the coffee shop where one of them logged in every morning. I could see the burner phones tethered to their accounts. Layer by layer, their mask was slipping. They tried one last escalation before I pulled the trigger. A certified courier showed up at my house, demanding I sign for a final notice of foreclosure. Lisa answered the door. She's tough, but I could see her hands shake as she closed it. The envelope was thick, filled with stamped papers designed to overwhelm. I flipped through. Every single page was nonsense. Wrong statutes cited. Fake signatures. Stolen notary seals. But the tactic was brilliant in its own way. Drown the victim in paper until they give up. Most families would have buckled right there. Instead, I smiled. Because the thicker the stack, the stronger the evidence. Here's where the real trap closed. I scheduled a settlement meeting, just like they wanted. A neutral site, a coffee shop downtown. I told them I'd bring cash, $5,000 in a sealed envelope, to wipe the lien clean. They took the bait. 3 men arrived, the same ones who had stood on my porch pretending to be cops. They wore plain clothes this time, but their swagger gave them away. They thought they were about to walk away with thousands. They had no idea they were walking into a federal operation. As I slid the envelope across the table, one of them cracked a grin. "Smart move," he said. "Better to pay than lose your house." I leaned back, calm as ever. "Better to record this," I replied, tapping the small body cam clipped under my jacket. Their smiles dropped. A half-second later, the cafe flooded with agents. Local PD, FBI financial crimes, even a Treasury investigator. The scammers froze as badges surrounded them. One tried to run, tackled before he hit the door. Another went pale and muttered, "We were just following orders." In minutes, they were cuffed and escorted out, their laptops and phones bagged as evidence. But the real prize wasn't them. It was the data we pulled. Emails, account records, forged Leanne templates, even spreadsheets of their victims. Dozens of families, hundreds of thousands in attempted extortion. Some had paid. Some were still fighting. All of them had been prey. And now, because of this sting, they had a shot at justice. But I didn't stop at the arrests. I wanted restitution for the victims. I worked with federal prosecutors to freeze the ring's bank accounts. Over $480,000 sat in one account alone, waiting to be laundered overseas. We clawed it back, every cent. Then I pushed for something few victims ever see: allocation of seized funds to those scammed. By the time the dust settled, 27 families received checks averaging $15,000 each. For some, it meant paying off debts. For others, it meant saving their homes. That's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about fixing a broken system. Lisa hugged me the night the arrests aired on the news. "You didn't just stop them," she whispered. "You stopped it from happening to someone else." She was right. But the truth is, I didn't stop at stopping. I was already thinking 3 moves ahead, how to turn this fight into a blueprint. Because scams don't die when one crew goes down. They mutate, adapt, and find new prey. And unless regular families learn how to shield themselves, financially, legally, and psychologically, the cycle never ends. That was my next mission. Not just defense. Not just offense. Education. Reform. Empowerment. The courtroom wasn't just a legal battleground. It was theater. Rows of victims filled the benches, some clutching manila folders of evidence. Others just relief on their faces that someone finally listened. Across the aisle sat the 3 men we'd arrested, now in orange jumpsuits, their swagger gone. Their attorney tried the usual defense: misunderstanding, legitimate collection efforts, gray area lines. But the evidence was overwhelming. Wire transfers traced. Forged documents matched. Victim statements corroborated. And then came the kicker: the fake police badges recovered from their van. That alone carried a federal sentence. The prosecutors leaned on financial crimes because they carry the weight. Wire fraud. Bank fraud. Identity theft. Money laundering. Each charge stacked like bricks. By the time the indictment was read, they were facing 20 years apiece. But beyond punishment, I wanted precedent. I had testified about the tactics: fake lines, spoofed calls, intimidation. I wanted it on the record that this wasn't just harassment. It was financial terrorism. And when the judge slammed the gavel, calling it a coordinated scheme of extortion under the guise of property enforcement, I knew he had it. Case law.ny. A blueprint for the next family that stands up. The trial made headlines. Local outlets ran with the drama. Fake cops tried to extort veteran. National outlets leaned into the finance angle. Fraudulent liens target homeowners. FBI sting uncovers multi-state scheme. The more the story spread, the more my inbox filled. Families from across the country wrote, "This happened to us too." Some had lost tens of thousands. Some had nearly lost homes. Others had just gotten their first letter and didn't know what to do. They weren't asking for sympathy. They were asking for strategy. So I gave it to them. Not with fiery speeches, but with financial blueprints. I started posting breakdowns on my channel. How to spot a fraudulent lien. 5 financial shields every homeowner needs. Freeze your credit before scammers do. These weren't just stories. They were tutorials. Each video doubled as a survival kit: credit freezes, insurance reviews, emergency funds, HELOCs as shields, LLCs for property. The comments weren't just likes. They were victories. I froze my credit today, just checked my homeowner's insurance for coverage, opened a high-yield savings account because of you. That's impact. That's prevention. And then came the financial institutions. Mortgage lenders, credit monitoring services, fintech startups. They saw the traffic, the engagement, the trust. They wanted partnerships. But here's the thing. I didn't take every offer. I filtered ruthlessly. If I hadn't used it myself, I wouldn't recommend it. That's why when I did promote a tool, like a credit monitoring app I used to flag fraud attempts, it wasn't just an ad. It was a weapon I'd battle-tested. The payoff? Ads weren't just entertainment tier. They were finance tier. Mortgage ads. Insurance ads. Investment ads. The RPM on some videos spiked over $50. Integrity plus strategy equals impact plus income. Meanwhile, Lisa and I doubled down on our own financial fortress. The settlement funds I'd clawed back from the scammers weren't spent on luxuries. They went into resilience. We maxed out our emergency fund, $75,000 parked in a high-yield account. We opened a solo 401(k) for my freelance consulting, socking away $22,500 tax deferred. We bought an umbrella insurance policy covering $2 million liability, just in case someone tried another legal ambush. And every month, we reviewed the spreadsheet, net worth climbing steadily, debt at zero. Risk minimized. This wasn't paranoia. It was peace. At one point, a journalist asked me, why focus so much on finance in a story about fake cops? My answer was simple: because scams live in fear, and finance is the antidote. When families know how to freeze credit, build cash reserves, leverage insurance, and structure assets, scammers lose power. Fear only works when you're financially fragile. But when your finances are fortified, fear bounces off like rubber bullets. That's the lesson the media missed, but my audience didn't. The 3 scammers were sentenced to a combined 47 years in federal prison. Their ringleader, the one who smiled as he tried to take my envelope of cash, got 22 alone. Restitution was ordered too, though the seized funds we'd already redistributed meant many victims had already been made whole. For once, the system worked. But I didn't walk out of that courtroom feeling victorious. I walked out feeling responsible. Because the truth is, new scammers would rise. Unless families armed themselves, history would repeat. That's when I launched my program, Financial Defense, a 12-module online course teaching homeowners how to shield themselves from fraud, harassment, and intimidation using financial tools. Insurance stacking, LTAs, emergency reserves, credit locks, even media leverage. I priced it modestly, $199, not because I undervalued it, but because I knew what it could save someone down the line. The first 3,000 enrollments came in under 6 weeks. That's nearly $600,000 in revenue. But what mattered wasn't the money. It was the emails. Your module on insurance got my claim approved for $18,000. I set up an LLC for my rental property. I finally have a 6-month emergency fund. This wasn't content anymore. It was armor. And yet, even with all the success, I stayed grounded in one truth. This fight wasn't about revenge. Revenge burns fast. Reform burns steady. My revenge was seeing them in cuffs. My reform was knowing families would never fall into that trap again. And with every video, every guide, every spreadsheet I shared, the reform spread wider. Because finance isn't just numbers. Finance is power. And when power returns to the people, scams die. That's what part 4 of this story was really about, turning intimidation into education and fear into financial freedom. Today, when I step out onto the porch of our cabin, the air feels different. Not just because the mountains are quiet, or because Lisa finally sleeps without nightmares, but because the shadow is gone. The front door that once symbolized vulnerability now represents victory. And not just mine. Ours on? Every family who refused to be bullied, every homeowner who thought they were alone. This door isn't just wood. It's proof that even when the enemy comes wearing a badge, real or fake, you can fight back. Not with fists, with facts, with finances, with fortitude. The three scammers are locked away, their fake empire shattered. But the real victory is what came after. The judge ruling didn't just convict them. It rewrote precedent. It made fraudulent liens easier to challenge. It forced transparency on contractors posing as enforcers. And most importantly, it sent a message. Financial fraud under the guise of authority isn't just theft. It's terrorism. That ruling will protect people I'll never meet, in towns I'll never visit. And that's the kind of legacy that outlives one man, one fight, one trial. My life changed too. I still serve my country, but not just as an agent. Now I serve as a teacher. I built a framework called HOA Financial Shielding, a 5-step system anyone can follow. 1. Document every threat, every letter, every fake line. Evidence is leverage. 2. Freeze your credit with all 3 bureaus. It's free, permanent, and blocks fraud at the source. 3. Review your insurance for liability, legal defense, and emotional distress coverage. Most families don't realize their policies already include protection. 4. Build an emergency fund. 6-12 months of expenses because cash flow buys both time and power. 5. Consult an attorney early. Don't wait until you're cornered. Knowledge and timing are everything. But I didn't stop at defense. I taught offense. The kind where you don't attack people, you attack fear. I showed families how to use LLCs to protect rental properties, how to leverage HELOCs as financial shields, how to stack umbrella insurance policies for pennies on the dollar, and how to use high-yield accounts to make their emergency funds grow instead of collect dust. These weren't theories. They were strategies I lived. Strategies that saved my house, my wife, and my peace of mind. And when people applied them, the feedback was the same. I don't feel afraid anymore. That's the ROI you'll never see in a stock chart. The financial side of the fight built a new kind of freedom for us. Our emergency fund sits at $90,000. Our investments cleared $400,000. We own our home outright. No mortgage, no liens, no threats. Retirement accounts are maxed. Umbrella insurance is in place. And every week we update our spreadsheet like clockwork. Some people call it obsessive. I call it armor. Because when life throws its worst at you, armor matters more than luxury. A Ferrari can't stop a fraudulent lien. A spreadsheet can. Media still calls sometimes. TV spots, podcasts, book deals. I take a few, but I'm selective. Because this was never about fame. It was about giving people the one thing no scammer wants them to have: knowledge. Scammers thrive on confusion. They profit off panic. But the second you see the playbook, their power dies. That's why every interview, every keynote, every video always comes back to the same truth. Finance is freedom. The stronger your money, the weaker their grip. Lisa says it better than I ever could. One night, sitting by the fire, she said, "They came for us with fake authority, but you showed me that our authority comes from what we've built. Our savings, our insurance, our credit, our rights. That's real power. That's what they could never take." She was right. Power isn't in intimidation. It's in preparation. And preparation is financial. So if you're hearing this and you're in the storm, maybe you've gotten a letter, a call, a knock on your door. Listen carefully. You are not powerless. You are not at their mercy. You have tools. You have rights. You have options. Document everything. Freeze your credit. Review your insurance. Build your fund. Consult counsel. And never let fear silence you. Because fear is their only weapon. Finance is yours. When I look back, I don't see myself as the guy who busted scammers. I see myself as the guy who built a shield. A shield made of cash reserves, legal clauses, credit locks, and insurance riders. And every time I hand that shield to another family, the scammer's world shrinks. That's the war I fight now. Not with badges and stings, but with spreadsheets and savings accounts. And honestly, it's the most satisfying war I've ever fought. So here's my final truth. Your home isn't just an address. It's your fortress. Your money isn't just math. It's your weapon. And your story isn't just struggle. It can be strength. They tried to arrest me with lies, but I arrested their entire empire with finance. And so can you. Build your shield. Claim your freedom. Protect your future. Because in the end, financial preparedness isn't just survival. It's victory.